welcome to the 6th annual Stu and Rou's NFL preview, this year being the new millennium 2000. I'm Mike Stewart, as always, joined by my compatriot, and in a Patriot garb, no less, Mr. Chris Spiro.
New unis.
Woo!
Good to be back. Looking forward to a good season here, Mike.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we have an interesting season no matter what happens with the Patriots, because we're not sure which way they're going to go this year. But certainly NFL is on the rise. It's certainly not the pastime, but it's certainly, I think, America's passion. I think this year should really bring some interesting situations with all the parity that's gone on in the league. Do you think that helps it or hurts it?
You know, it's a question I debated myself during the off season and whatnot. Obviously, last season was very difficult to really get a good grasp on what was exactly going on. Saying that St. Louis and Tennessee would be in the Super Bowl, you know, there were very high odds out in Las Vegas if you had to happen to cash in on those bets. I think we're still we're in a transition period now. We're not sure who the new superstars are going to be in the league. You know, Kurt Warner was not even a name on anyone's tongue at the beginning of last season, and now he's an MVP and a Super Bowl MVP. Mm-hmm. So the stars are changing, and I don't really know. You know, I think people just love NFL football, and they're going to watch it no matter what. It's a situation where, you know, will the new stars take over? You know, we've seen John Elway retire. Dan Marino is now gone. A couple of the old time people like the Buffalo Bills, the Bruce Smiths, Andre Reeds, Thurman Thomases, they're no longer with the Bills. Right. There's a little change going on, and it's going to be an interesting season to see if the new guard still takes over, if there's a little fight left in the old teams.
Right. I think that certainly with the way that they've tried to design it so that, you know, teams have a couple of years runs, but the days of maybe San Francisco's dynasties and stuff like that with salary cap, I mean, they circumvented it for a while, but now it finally caught up with them, and they look like a team that's ready to head down on the south side of things. And I think after a while, I think there's a lot of teams that are going to eventually be able to step up if provided they can draft half decently. Yeah,
I think a lot of it now is, I think everyone feels they had to have a chance. What happened last year with the different teams in the playoffs and none of the old guard really sticking out and being there, I think it's a situation where, you know, hey, even the Baltimores, the Chicagos, the Kansas Cities, all those teams that were struggling last year, saying, you know, look at what St. Louis did. They had a tough year the year before. They won the Super Bowl, you know, the next year. So get a couple of decent players in there, you know, still coach and build a strong team from within, which is what St. Louis did. You know, they had some quality player personnel people. That's a big issue, like Mike was saying about salary cap issues. It's a matter of getting all these factors into, you know, a cohesive unit, and when you do that, you can get the combination. But like also what Mike said, I think the Destiny team and the Dynasty team, you know, it's going to be a tough one because the dynasties are going to be hard to find. The players are going to move on and cash in where they can. You know, it's a loyalty thing again. I think we've seen in all the sports with players, you know, maybe leaving for the big bucks. So the days of the dynasty could be gone. I'm not real sure. We'll have to see.
We'll have to wait and see how that all transpires. I mean, I think the days of you know, Jack Lambert's one draft, one team, professional career, 4 Super Bowls, those type of things I think are gone because the money in free agency is kind of ruining that loyalty. You almost have to become a team-oriented person in terms of I'm going to root for the Pats, or I'm going to root for the Bucks, or I'm going to root as opposed to players, because players move around too much, it seems.
Right. I think, you know, that the Seinfeld line about rooting for players and, you know, rooting for clothing is really what you're doing. It's hard. It's really hard to grasp on to you know, to a team and their players because their look can change very quickly. I mean, as you know, let's take the Patriots for example. Coach Belichick said, you know, since he was here in the Super Bowl year, there's been so much turnaround. You know, granted, there's still some of the core people, but we've seen it's not the core people that always get you the victories and the wins. You know, Bledsoe's still here, Slade's still here, you know, McGinnis is still here, Ted Johnson is here. You know, but you know, in terms of, you know, who Drew's handing the ball off to or who he's throwing the ball to, Terry Glenn's still here. But you know, again, I've mentioned 5 players out of, you know, a team of 49.
Right.
That's not going to really do it. So I think it is a situation where you want to get the cohesive unit of team players that are going to get you to, you know, to the big game.
Right. All right. Well, why don't we move along now and try to get to see how our picks do for the upcoming season. I think last year we struggled a little bit with a couple of the divisions, but you know, it was tough with St. Louis stepping up to the plate and teams that had a lot of injuries. A lot of teams that we had in the playoffs, unfortunately, they had injury situations, the Jets, with Vinny, and Denver with Terrell Davis, and Atlanta with Anderson. So it was tough to forecast, and it's tough to forecast injuries.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we both had at least Jacksonville going to the Super Bowl, or at least going to the championship game, not the Super Bowl.
Right.
In the NFC, it was Tampa.
Right.
And it was just one of those things where, Mike liked Tampa, give him credit for that, but it's hard to put St. Louis in there. You'd be, you'd be really doing something. We'd be playing that tape over and over if either of us had St. Louis going anywhere last year.
And winning it.
Yeah, but needless to say, we didn't, and it's hard. It really is hard, and I think it was kind of a wake-up season. Like, whoa, anyone can do this, and
right.
We got a couple of teams that we're maybe thinking about could pull a St. Louis. Maybe we're not predicting it, but we might talk about that later on in the show about teams that might be able to pull a St. Louis surprise.
Okay, well, why don't we see what I should say, have for the AFC East, obviously a division that, year in, year out, we're pretty familiar with. We'll take a peek at the graphic. I think this year basically kind of fell in line with what's going on in terms of Indianapolis's rise. I mean, we had them kind of as one of the up-and-coming teams, and they stepped up a little bit earlier than we thought. Obviously, their offense is exciting and explosive with Manning and James and Harrison, a couple of good tight ends. Their defense is the main key. They can be run on, as Tennessee proved in their playoff game last year. But I think that they're going to still make their strides towards winning the division. And I think at 11-5, or maybe even 10-6, I actually had 10-6 here. I may have made a mistake on the 11-5, but 11-5, 10-6. I think that they win the division, but they have right now what's based on last year's record is the third hardest schedule. They have a ton of tough games this year, and I think it's going to be tough for them to be able to pull off that division. Buffalo, I don't know which way to go on them. They kind of got rid of some of their old guard, but they still have some players that are lingering around. Their offense, the Flutie and Johnson turmoil, we don't know which way that's going to affect. If people are on Johnson's side, or if the team's on Johnson's side, then certainly they could rise to that occasion. Their running backs, Antoine Swift's banged up, Linton's banged up. They got a kid Bryson, we're not sure. Defensively, they're very good. There's no doubt about that. And barring a fluke play by Tennessee last year, they might have been to the AFC Championship game. So You don't know which way they go. I have them 9-7, probably battling for a playoff spot. The hometown team, New England, I have them going 8-8 just because I just don't know. I really don't know. They're so hard to figure out this year. You don't know if Drew's going to be able to stay off of his back with that offensive line. The defensively, I don't think is ever going to be an issue. They'll certainly keep them in the games. The problem's going to be, can they get enough ball control to keep New England's defense off the field so that they don't get worn down by the teams that are bigger or more offensively talented than late in the games. I can see them losing a bunch of games late because of the fact that they can't run the ball. But if Falk or Redmond, or if maybe they pull a Hicks deal or something along that, if they can start to run the ball with the offensive line, and if Belichick's scheming with that line works better than anything that Carroll had for the last 3 years, then maybe we might be able to run the ball, and then you don't know. With their schedule a little bit weaker than the rest of the division I think is starting to crumble a little bit, and there's some room for movement, so we'll see what happens with that. The Jets, similar circumstance in that they're coming back, they got the key guys coming back from injury. They lost Keyshawn. Corbett's going to be double teamed, so offensively you're not sure, but they still have Martin, and they have a great offensive line. Defensively, they're okay. They showed last year that kept them in some games. They hung around. Obviously, Parcells was on the sideline last year. That may have had a factor. Algro steps in now in his first year. Tuna's kind of in the back pulling the puppeteer strings, but we'll see what they can do. I have them at 7-9. They're in that mix. Miami at 6-10, very down on them. Defensively solid, but they'll have the same situation as New England in terms of their defense is going to get worn down late in the games because their offense, I don't think, can muster it. What do you got?
Well, that's a pretty good synopsis of the division. In terms of my picks and how I see the teams doing, they're fairly similar. I think we only have one real big flip-flop. It's hard to deny that Indianapolis has a lot of weapons. If you go with the big three of Manning, James, and Harrison, that's a nice quality building block to go on. That's something that I think a lot of teams strive for. So I will have Indianapolis winning the division. I have an 11-5. Where we differ just really is the Patriots and the Bills. I don't know. Maybe I am a homer, but I think that the Patriots are going to be okay. I mean, I do understand that if Bledsoe has some problems and they have a lot of 3-and-outs and the defense is on the field for a long time, that's going to be a big issue. But I just think that Belichick and Charlie Weiss, they're going to be able to come up with some sort of scheme where, you know, like we know we can't run the ball all the time, and we know we have to keep the defense off the field. You know, lots of short passes, maybe slants. You know, the whole Bishop thing, I don't even want to get into it because that's a whole show by itself. But, you know, other wrinkles in the offense to keep the defense off guard, just to give the defense a rest. The defense should be fine. We all know, you know, who the studs are there. It's good that they have Lawyer back, you know, back in the in the fold, and him and Law. If you can get a healthy Ted Johnson in there, you know, help with Katzenmoyer, Slade, McGinnis. You know, if they can get some more pressure from the line, you know, put a little bit more pressure on other teams' offense, that'll help with some picks. Langham and Smith, just some late, you know, signs and whatnot, just to fill in some gaps. That other corner is always going to be an Achilles heel for the team, but I think they know that. It's just going to be a situation where, you know, they're going to have to outgun some people. You know, Drew might have to pass 50 times, you know, quite often, but, you know, if that's what it takes, I think they can do it. I'm not with all the naysayers yet. Maybe, you know, 8-8 isn't out of the question, but I think that, you know, they can steal a game or two that maybe folks aren't going to give them a chance to. So 9-7, and, you know, fighting for a playoff spot. Buffalo, as you know, Mike alluded to, they're a team in transition. Which way are they going? The Rob Johnson Flutie thing, to be honest with you, I don't think it really matters to me. Granted, they are different quarterbacks, but I think it's a situation where the offense lends itself to whatever quarterback is playing. That's what, you know, they'll run those plays. It's a team that is in transition. The running back situation, like Mike said, they've got a couple people banged up. You know, that almost in a Patriots type of feel, it's like who's gonna run the ball for them? They do have some talented wide receivers. You know, Moulds is very talented. They need some more output from Price. You know, what's going to happen there defensively? You know, they lost Bruce Smith, and you know, you could argue whether that's good or bad or not. You know, he didn't have that great a year. You know, he's very situational, kind of banged up. With him going to Washington, you know, is there someone to step up at least to be a threat? You know, whether or not he was, you know, as strong as he ever was. I know that he caused the Patriots a lot of problems, and just having Bruce Smith on the opposite side of the line of you have to think about it. You know, what kind of a move he's going to do and whatnot. So it's tough. I think that the Buffalo is a swing team in this division where you're not really sure exactly which way they're going to go. If Flutie's healthy in Week 5 and there's some more internal turmoil, that could, you know, have a negative effect on the team also. But I have them at 8-8, pretty much with Rob Johnson going all the way. If there's a Flutie factor involved, I'm not really sure what that does with it. But like I said, I think they're fairly interchangeable. The Jets I have at 7-9. You know, as Mike alluded to, Wayne Cravet's going to be the #1 receiver now. He's pretty much you know, just an offshoot guy. He should always be a #2. You know, he's a Troy Brownish, if you want to throw it in New England terms. It's hard to see him really as the focus. I'm not sure he has the size or the strength to battle for the balls. You know, he's gonna out jump anybody for a ball like Keyshawn did. You know, is he gonna muscle anybody out on a 3rd and 5? I mean, he's a good 3rd down receiver, but he's a good 3rd down slot receiver, not being the guy everyone's gonna key on.
I agree.
Who's gonna be on the other side? Don't tell me Vincent Brisby. You know, that's just not going to work, you know. Vinny is back, and Curtis actually had a terrific preseason. He had one of his better preseasons and had about a 6-yard average per carry. You know, it helps. You know, I think that they think that there is a little bit of stability. I'm just worried about when that team has a little bump in the road and they all look to Coach Grow, and it's not the same, you know, like, you know, it doesn't matter, we're going to come through it no matter what face of Coach Parcells. They might go, you know, this guy's no Parcells, and, you know, we're just kind of getting a paycheck here. So we'll see with them early what kind of team they're going to be. Are they going to, like, say, oh, the old coach is gone, we might as well pack it in, we had our chance? Or is it going to be a situation where, you know, hey, let's fight for this guy, we really like him, I think we can do it? I tend to go a little bit towards the first one of those options. 7-9 isn't, you know, it's obviously would be a step up from last year. They actually played pretty well at the end of the year last year. You know, maybe they can put it together. I just don't think so. It's a division where they're going to be, you know, a lot of teams. There's going to be a lot of splits, I think, back and forth, and I think they're going to lose maybe a couple of series to some teams. That gets them to 7-9. The Dolphins I have at 6-10. You know, like Mike, I'm kind of really down on them. You know, Fiedler and Hewitt as quarterbacks. That's just, you know, not really the best place to start. I'm not a big Lamar Smith fan or J.J. Johnson fan, to be honest with you. I mean, Smith is okay, but, you know, just the loss of Dan Marino, the loss of Jimmy Johnson, that's just a tough one to take. I just think that they're in a tough situation. You know, regardless of how good their defense, you know, can play. You know, obviously Zach Thomas is a player. Sam Athens is a terrific player. You know, we'd love to have him on your team, but it's just not enough. And I think that in a division that, for the most part, most of the defenses are, average or to above average, it's going to be tough. And their offense, I think, is the most suspect out of all of them in the division. So they're probably going to end up at 6-10. So I give the division to the Colts. I think that should be the way it goes. It's tough. I found one thing in doing the analysis for all these teams. The Colts are getting a lot of hype. There's a lot of teams getting a lot of hype. Washington, just to throw out another name. Obviously the Super Bowl teams from last year. And just in doing the analysis, it's like, well, you know what? Why are they so good? And I looked at the rest of the division and their team, what they have for players, and for the most part, there's no dominant team like there has been, usually in the league for the past, 20 years even. So it's a situation where, Indy should win the division. They probably have the most talent. Are they going to? Probably, but I wouldn't really be surprised if, like I said, the Buffalo situation, they play really well, or even the Patriots. Like I said, I don't believe that they can be that bad. Right. Maybe I have rose-colored glasses on, but I think they'll be okay.
Okay, Homer.
So that's how I see the AFC East. I think Mike's got want to lead us into what we're going to see in the Central and throw it back to me?
Actually, I'll throw it back to you and let you take this one to run.
All right. Well, with the Central, it's Tennessee was our AFC. They were the ones who were just a yard away from the Super Bowl
what a
championship.
Game that was, too. Oh.
It was quite a good Super Bowl. But they were lucky to get there. Forget the Music City Miracle and whatnot. They're a good team. There's no doubt about it. But I think they're going to have a little bit of not trouble, but they're going to, it's not going to be an easy cakewalk for them to get back to the big game. Let's take a look at my graphic. And I think I actually have Jacksonville and Tennessee both with 11-5 records. I actually have Jacksonville, just up there first because tiebreaker reasons or whatnot. I just think that they're going to recover. I know they're going to start the season off without Fred Taylor for at least a couple of weeks. That is a big concern of mine. They are a different team with Fred Taylor in the backfield. It's a situation where if he's healthy and the rest of the team is clicking, they're very formidable and they're going to be tough to beat.
Right.
They are, one thing that Mike alluded to at the beginning of the show is it's hard to predict injuries. And right now they are, we're going into the season, they're already banged up. The offensive line is in tough shape. It's a situation where the defense is strong. They have, they've got some really strong players. Right. But is that enough to carry them until the offensive line gets healthy or at least gets back to, respectability so they can protect Mark Brunell, who has been taking a lot of hits, in the preseason.
True.
It's a tough one. I just think that Coach Coughlin is, he's a pretty strict and stern guy, and I think that works well for his system and the players there. I just think that they're going to come back and have a good season. Go 11-5 and win the division. Tennessee, we know they can do. Steve McNair is probably going to have a better year than he had last year. I think he was a little confined in the way they ran the offense. They have a new offensive coordinator there, and they're going to open it up a little bit more. It's a situation where he's going to have a little bit more free reign. I think he should be able to not worry about making the mistake and go for making the play. Thinking, look, you're the guy, don't worry about, Neil O'Donnell or anyone else looking over your shoulder. It's just, let's go out there and you be the stud quarterback. Obviously they've got talent in running back, Eddie George. They've got quality wide receivers. The defense speaks for itself. They played really well. And they are a good team. I don't want to discount them going to the Super Bowl. They earned it. They no one gave it to them. But I think it's a situation where the division is pretty weak, and Jacksonville and Tennessee are definitely the cream of the crop in the division. So they get a few easy wins in there. The schedule overall isn't that tough anyway. So 11-5 for both Tennessee and Jacksonville. That's about right, I think. I think Baltimore is a team that's very interesting. I have them at 9-7. That would be right in there fighting for a playoff spot. I think a lot of it hinges on the quarterback. Tony Banks he's always had a lot of promise, and he's always been a guy that even in St. Louis, they're like can this guy be the guy that takes us to the promised land? It didn't work out there for whatever reason. Baltimore has some offensive weapons. Priest Holmes, decent back. Jamal Lewis, another decent back. It's a situation where they have players to do, if you want a goal line back, or if you want to have a back, an every down back, that are good quality players like it would play for on any other team. and the defense is strong. I think Billick really has the ball rolling, and one of those teams that we were talking about earlier could be a surprise team. I don't know if they can win the Super Bowl like St. Louis did, but it's a situation where there's talent there, and it's undeniable. 4 games with Jacksonville and Tennessee, that's pretty tough. If they can split those, the playoffs are definitely within reach.
Right.
But it's a matter of getting over the hump. I think that's going to be one of the keys in getting these new blood, the young bloods coming in. Is can they get over the hump, beat the team that was in front of them last year, and make it run in the playoffs.
Sure.
The last 2 teams in the division, I'm going to kind of clump them together. Cincinnati and Cleveland. They're not really the same, but they're both young teams. You have Achilles Smith in Cincinnati and Tim Couch in Cleveland. It's a growing process. It's a situation where they have to get their familiar with the people in their offense. And is Corey Dillon going to be okay? Who's going to really run the ball for Cleveland? Are they going to be able to have cohesiveness with the offenses, both situations? Chris Palmer, we all know he's a great guy and whatnot. Did he bite off more than he can chew trying to take this job? It's not often you see someone take an expansion team and really lead them on. What the jobs that Capers and Coughlin did in Carolina and Jacksonville was first time we've ever seen anything like that. So I'm not really sure if Chris Palmer is that type to be the one who can really get it going. So both those teams are going to struggle. I just have Cincinnati a little bit higher than Cleveland just because they do have more experienced players on their team. It's a situation where they are more familiar with what's going on. They do have some quality players. Dillon is a good back if he's got his head on straight. Peter Warrick should have a decent year. I'm not really so psyched about when you're a struggling team taking a wide receiver with a high pick who's not that tall, not that fast. I mean, obviously the ball's going to go his way, and he's a quality athlete. But is that going to be the guy that helps bring the team to the next level? I don't think so. So pretty much in the division, I see Jacksonville and Tennessee, at the top. Baltimore, right there in the middle. Maybe they're a maybe team. Maybe you put an asterisk next to them and go, well, you've got to keep an eye on them. Pittsburgh, a team I kind of left out purposefully because Pittsburgh has always had a good place in my heart. I don't want to see them knocked down so bad as I usually do. I always usually had to pick them winning the division. I think even last year I might have just for heart's sake, but. They're falling on tough times. Kent Graham and Cordell Stewart are going to be, flip-flopping a little bit in quarterback. Actually, I heard even CBS Sportsline was saying that Cordell might be the away quarterback and Kent Graham would be the home quarterback. I mean, how ridiculous is that? You can't win anything, with a system like that.
Nope.
So, Pittsburgh is definitely on the way down. Jerome Bettis isn't the back he was, 3 years ago, So it's going to be tough for them. So Pittsburgh leads the second half of the division of the lousy teams, followed by Cincinnati and Cleveland. Michael.
Very good. Very interesting. Some similarities, obviously, more probably geared towards the bottom of the division than they're at the top. I'm actually a little bit sold on Baltimore. I think Mr. Billick and his offensive schemes, the way that they played towards the end of the year, I actually have them winning the division.
Whoa!
Which
someone get my glasses. What's that say?
Well, the thing is, I think if you look at statistically the last 3 years, there's at least one, if not 2, division winners that you just didn't expect them to come out and do it. So, with that in mind, I kind of played to that a little bit, and I picked Baltimore to win the division. They got a little bit easier schedule than Tennessee and Jacksonville. Sure. They got the offensive gun, and they certainly have one of the best defenses going. And I think, as we know, defenses usually win championships, but you notice one of the things that has been key with offenses and winning the Super Bowls most recently is you need to be able to score points, and Baltimore can do that, and they have the defense to hold people back. So I have them winning the division. I think that they're going to be one of those sleeper teams, surprise teams, whatever you want to call it. I think they have a really good chance to do some damage to some folks. Tennessee, I have a 10-6, Eddie George, Steve McNair. They picked up Kyle Pickens. Offensively, they should be fine. They got to open it up, like Chris said, with the new offensive coordinator. Defensively, they're still strong. Special teams has always been a strong suit for the Jeff Fisher run team. So I think that they're still going to be in the run, but a harder schedule. People know about them. The Super Bowl recipient from the AFC, people are going to be able to gun them. I think they'll have some struggles from time to time. Jacksonville, I picked them to go to the Super Bowl the last 2 years. I mean, his is Pittsburgh, mine's been Jacksonville. But this year, with Freddie Taylor banged up and the offensive line, which has been their strong suit, no Cersei. Baselli's not 100%. You know, there's too many issues on that line, and Brunel has just been way overrated as far as I'm concerned. I've liked him. I've thought he'd been able to do the job, and he just hasn't been. And, you know, defensively, they still have some good people there. Hardy Nicholson maybe on the downside of his career, but he can still bring a lot to the table. You know, they're still going to be in the games, and, you know, 9-7 certainly not a poor record, and they'll be in that playoff hunt for that last spot. But down on them big time as opposed to what I was the last couple of years, obviously having them go into the Super Bowl. Pittsburgh at 7-9, as Chris pointed out, they're, you know, Graham, Stewart, home, away. What is that? I mean, Carr was better than that. I'm not sure what. I guess he's really just reaching. He knows that his quarterback situation is bleak. You know, they picked up a great wide receiver in Plaxico Burress, which is a great name. Richard Huntley will probably be the running back once he gets healthy. They gave him big money to you know, come in and do that. Bettis is way on the downside. Defensively, they always have people, Kirkland, other guys, and you know, they end up losing some folks to free agency, which has been there. You know, that kudo on a negative side for the last few years. But I have them going 7-9. You know, they'll be in some games. Maybe they steal a few. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that actually be worse of a record, and that situation just totally folding up shop. Cincinnati, I have it 6-10. They're one of those teams. Every year you're like, oh, they could put it together. They get some, you know, they got half decent defense. Maybe they, you know, offensively they're going to come. Dillon's been there for a few years now. You know, they got a running game, and they picked up Smith last year. I have them 6-10, but you know, if Pittsburgh's situation gets ugly, which I think it could, Cincinnati can move up a bit, and they can, you know, they're going to be right there. Warwick's going to get the ball because if Dillon is, you know, not in jail for God knows what, if he's not in jail and he is running the ball, their offensive line is a lot better. It's been continually getting better as it's gone on. If he can run the ball, that keeps the wide receiver in the middle of the field open. You know, Achille has a great arm, great precision passer. He can find work, and you know, maybe they can do some things. And you know, defensively, they pick up Takeo Spikes last year. He had a great year for the linebackers. You know, they're on the rise defensively. So, and they're playing in a new stadium. Maybe the people come, and maybe it becomes the 12th man for them. Whatever can help the Bengals, because they've certainly been struggling for a while now. But I think that could be a team. You know, that 6-10 may be on the low side. I mean, watch out for that. Cleveland, give them a couple more years. They grab some older guys just to kind of mold it together, but they're building with young. And they picked up Eric Rett to help with the running game. You know, Couch is going to need a little time to develop. You know, Kevin Johnson, a little hurt in preseason, but he'll be fine. They're going to be fine. They're going to be a good team down the road. They obviously have the stadium and the fans and the backing and everything else. Give them time and they'll be there. So I think Baltimore, a little bit of a surprise, but I think as it's, you know, shown over the stats statistically, there's always that team that, you know, steps up. And like last year, we didn't expect Indy, and they were there, but they were a team on the rise. So sometimes it just happens that you got to pick a team on the rise and go with it. So I did.
It's not. I mean, it really isn't out of line, like you're saying. You know, we've seen that they were a quality team last year. You know, even, you know, once they figured out who their, you know, the quarterback was and what they were doing, they performed well. Right. And like I said, the defense has always been performing well anyway. You know, they finally seemed to gel. I think it was, you know, I forget, you know, week 11 or so. They were like, you know, hey, you know, if they weren't in so much of a hole from the beginning of the season, they actually maybe weren't able to make a run. So, you know, I kid you about it, but they're a decent team. You know, I think, you know, Cincinnati and Cleveland, they are far away, and you know, they could still go either way depending on how their drafts and player development goes and who they keep.
Right.
But yeah, you know, Baltimore is a team to watch, but I still think that Jacksonville and Tennessee are the cream of that division.
We'll see. We shall see sometime late December, I think.
Okay.
Why don't we move on to my AFC West and
Okay.
get through this? Yeah, I think I got a team last year that was rated top 10 offensively, top 10 defensively, and special teams. I think they were 28th. And that would be the Oakland Raiders. Oh. They had a team that was right there. If they had a better punting situation, better kickoff and punt return coverage, and most importantly, a better field goal kicker, they would have made the playoffs, and they may have, you know, done some damage. I love John Gruden.
Oops.
A little look-alike thing there. I love John Gruden. I think he's, you know, a great offensive mind, and I think that they're going to be, you know, a team that's going to be able to put some points on the board. Defensively, you know, there's some issues there, but they got, you know, Woodson, they got McLaughlin, and they have some good linebackers. So I think they're going to be fine. And the key to the whole thing, they picked up a great punter, and more importantly, they picked up a great field goal kicker in Janikowski. Watch for him to break the record this year. I think he has the leg to do it, provided he doesn't get deported. But that's another whole issue. Second place I have at 10-6 is Seattle. Seattle, whatever. Holmgren, second situation. He succeeded in Green Bay, comes to Seattle, puts together a team that was half decent last year. Maybe they overachieved, maybe they didn't. We're going to find out this year. I have them at 10-6. The schedule's, a little bit more difficult than it was last year, but I think that they'll be fine. Kittner's starting to develop. The kid Mays they picked up from Green Bay. Obviously, Holmgren knew about him, so he grabbed him. He had 10 touchdowns last year. He looks pretty solid. Defensively, they still have a lot of the nucleus of players and Cortez and Adams and stuff like that. So, they're gonna be there. Now they're playing outside as opposed to the Dome. Dome got imploded there recently. They're building a new stadium, won't be ready, so they're playing at Husky Stadium. So that could affect them a little bit in terms of they may have to be a running team. And if they're a running team with Ricky Waters, then that record may end up being a little bit lower. But if the kid Alexander ends up being the running back, which I think a lot of people think that's going to happen, that's why I have them at 10-6, because I think Alexander will end up being the guy, and they'll be a good team. Denver I have at 9-7. Obviously, key there, Davis. If Davis can rebound, keep the linebackers and the safeties close to the line, then Greasy, the field will open up for him. You can find easy Ed McCaffrey and Rod Smith running down the sidelines, and they can score some points. Obviously, they have solid defense, ton of names and talent and stuff like that on that defense with Dale Carter and every other guy that was out there. So I think Denver's an interesting team. We'll see what happens, although they lost Carter because of the suspension, but they still have plenty of good name guys on there. Kansas City, I have 7-9, kind of down on them. Gunther Cunningham at the helm. Last year, he got squeaked into the playoffs because Nedney missed that field goal. They're, you don't know what to expect with Kansas City. They're a running team, they're not. They're a passing team, they got Alexander, they got this. I just, the loss of Thomas, that's going to hurt. Yep. Mentally, I think that'll be, you can call it as a rallying point, but I end up finding it on the negative side. I'm not sold on Kansas City and where they're going. The running back, the committee deal with Bennett, now it's Richardson, then it was Cloud. I mean, pick somebody and go with it, and if he doesn't do it, then do the job. Stop this mixing and matching and stuff. And I'm kind of down on them, and I'm not sure which way they're going to fall, but I have them at 7-9. We'll see how that transpires. San Diego 6-10, up and coming team. Mike Riley, great coach. They had a solid defense last year, and they pretty much every year they're in that realm. They're going to give the ball to Leaf. We'll see what happens. You don't know where the kid's going to. If he has a couple bad games, God help us all. So 6-10 have them, but you never know if Leaf can stand the heat and they can run the ball a little bit. They could be another one of those teams that a little bit higher on that schedule or the record than you think. So what do you got?
Before we get into this division, I'm just really sick of this division. I just, and you know what? It's funny because like growing up when I was younger, you really hated the Raiders and they're all black and evil with the the silver and all the painted faces and the crazy guys, and you hated the Broncos because the Patriots could never beat them, and John Elway just just trash them, and there's like some real emotion there. You know what? I could care less about this division. This division just is nothing to me. I just am very bored. I'm just very bored by this division. But since we're doing the whole, an overview of everybody, let's go into what I have.
All right.
And actually, I have Denver winning the division. I think that Brian Greasy's maturing a little bit, and the weapons were always there. I don't say it's the exact same team that John Elway left. Granted, I'm talking about John Elway. But it's not the exact same team, but for the most part, the core of the people are there. Terrell Davis should be back, and even if he's not, Olandis Gary did definitely prove himself to be a worthy backup. The weapons in Smith and McCaffrey, even Carswell or Chamberlain, if you want to go back down to the tight ends, there's people for him to throw to, and I think that one of the things that was holding him back before was decision making. And I think in a year of trying to really square away, who he's going to be as a quarterback. It's a situation where, I'm going to find the guy that's in single coverage. I'm not going to really force the ball in there. I think they've really made a conscious effort to work on, decision making with Greasy to say, look, please, we want you to be the quarterback. One of the things you can do to help yourself get there is make a lot of better decisions. So you put that into, alleviating all the pressure on him by a quality running game, something that the New England team could use. That it's a situation where, hey, their offense should be okay. Defensively, they had a little bit of a setback, I think, last year. I'm not sure if they were banged up or weren't sure exactly. I'm not sure if the Carter thing ever really worked out really that well, or what was going on there. And But I think their defense is good enough. Romanowski, for all the problems that he he seemed to follow this guy. He seems to be a guy that they gel around, regardless. So hopefully nothing will really come of that. I see them winning the division. Oakland, I have at 9-7. Battling for a playoff spot. I really like Gannon. I think he's a what he is a solid quarterback. You're gonna watch him and go, man, he's really good. And then other times you're like, what are you thinking? But you know what? You do that with almost every quarterback in the league anyway. He just seems really solid to me. And like Mike was saying before, Gruden's a quality coach. You gotta like what Oakland's doing. And the 70 Raiders teams aren't what the 90s Raiders teams. It's almost like the old Yankees and the new Yankees. You really hated them before, and now it's like, well, they're not so bad. And actually, if they weren't in a different city and a different team, maybe you'd kind of like them. But it's a situation where it's like everyone Woodson's a great player, and Tim Brown, he just doesn't offend anybody. It's like Tim Brown, Jet, and well, Andre Rison, we'll see if he actually sticks with the team and what that's all about. But he's a player that's like but the rest of the players, they're good players, So there's definitely a quality, and I haven't even touched on the D, which Mike already talked about. So it's one of those situations where they're a pretty good team. So I think they're 9-7. That might be a little conservative. I'm not really sure. That's kind of my maybe team in this division. Like I have them doing well, but they might do a lot better. Now the rest of the teams: Seattle, Kansas City, and San Diego. I'll do a little on each of them, but before I start again, I'm going to go into a little bit of a rant here. I don't know how many years. We've been doing the show 6 years, and I think every year I have Seattle at 8-8 or 9-7 or 7-9, and every year I say, "Oh, they're going to be better. Maybe this year they'll be pretty good." This is going to be the year that they, finally get there. And this is under Dennis Erickson. This is, I'm talking old regime. And you know what? They're the same team, and I'm sick and tired of it.
Tell us how you really feel.
Until Holmgren, until Favre gets shipped to out west, which might happen next year. Yes. Who knows? Yes. But until something like that happens, I could care less. And Kitna, Schmidtna, I don't, he's just lousy. He's just going to, an average quarterback in an average city for an average team. Never mind Ricky Watts. Maybe Sean Alexander is going to be exciting, and I'll go, ooh, okay, maybe, maybe there is something there, And, Derek Mays, they have quality players. But why is it every year 8-8, 7-9? I just, enough. Kansas City, Gunther Cunningham, Mike said it. It's just, pick a running back, pick players and just play them. Don't, this whole thing about the Ouija board and Mike Cloud. Oh, okay, Donnell Bennett.
Right.
It's, ugh. It's just a division where I just really am tired of it. San Diego's a little different. You always like the Bolts. They're just kind of a fun team.
Sure.
And you kind of wish the Ryan Leaf thing just would not go away, but just, look, grow up. You're the quarterback, making tons of money. Just do your job and shut up and don't get into all these little squabbles. They're a good team, so they're a good team that's to think maybe, up and coming, but not just yet. I think it's all Denver, Oakland in that division, and the rest of them, whatever.
All right. Moving on. Let's head quickly over to the NFC East. What do you got?
Sorry, was I a little too bitter there or something? No. NFC East. It's that's an interesting division. We're going to see some movers and shakers right off the top, and I think the division winners should be the Washington Redskins. Is that a surprise? I don't think so. If you've been paying attention to any of what's been going on in football lately, I don't think that's going to really be a shock to anyone. Daniel Snyder's not afraid to open his checkbook, and the old thing that Michael was talking about with the 49ers and things catching up to them. I like to see how Washington's going to be in about 4 years, because half the people they've signed are near or past their prime, and it's going to be a situation where they're going to be in tough shape.
Right.
But right now they're pretty good. You got like Brad Johnson. They got Deion Sanders. Stephen Davis, quality back. The wide receivers are good. They're a quality team. Never mind the draft picks. Arrington's going to be a stud.
Right.
They're going to be a good team. They're going to win the division, mostly because the division isn't that great, but they're a pretty good team anyway.
Right.
Dallas I have finishing second. One last gasp for Aikman and Smith, and please, how about them Cowboys? This could be the last year to be asking anything like a question like that, because they're they're past their prime. They got Galloway. That's a nice help. Santiago's going to be upgrading their tight end because they've normally had quality tight ends, and the Bjornsson LaFleur thing hasn't quite worked out yet. But at least they got a couple now they could probably do some offensive things with. Defensively, you don't have Dion anymore. They lost. They had a couple other losses, linebackers and whatnot. So it's going to be tough, but I think they'll be okay. They should be, battling at least. Excuse me.
Right.
The rest of the division, the Giants. I heard a lot of the pub about the Giants. I'm like, what's all this about the Giants? Oh, Kerry Collins is good. When did that happen? What did he? Holy, was he Fran Tarkington all of a sudden? Well, they actually do have some decent players. Ron Dane's probably going to be a decent back. I mean, the whole Tiki Barber thing, it's not working out. They've had the whole running back committee for too long now. It's been quite a while since Joe Morris or Rodney Hampton.
Right.
It's time, and he'll be the one. The defense was always decent. They kept them in games, but their offense has always struggled. If Kerry Collins can show me that he's a decent quarterback, maybe we got something there. I don't know if I'm going to believe it or not. We'll see. Philadelphia's a team that's, I think they're going to grow. They're a team that I would say they're not a maybe yet, but next year they should be they should be a maybe next year.
Yes,
they got decent quarterback, running back. Like Mike says, it takes a little time, almost in the Cleveland kind of vein, where it's like
I have them going 11-5, and I think that they'll pull out the division rather handily. The schedule shouldn't be too much of an issue, certainly when they have to play the division 2 times each. So I think they'll get their share of wins. Giants 9-7. I think Dane's going to be the guy eventually. Actually, that's a little inverted on the graphic. They actually had the Giants at 9-7 and Dallas at 8-8. You'll see that
Mike.
later. Little mistake on the graphic there, but I have Giants at 9-7. I think Dane's going to be good. The defense certainly is no question there. They got a grass field, ball control. Should be an interesting team, and there is a lot of hype on Collins. We'll see if it pans out. Dallas, I have at 8-8. Not sure if I believe in the whole Campo thing. He certainly is the puppet man for Mr. Jerry Jones, who's the real coach of the Dallas Cowboys, clearly. But they still have some quality players at key positions, and when you have that, then you can kind of win despite the meddling owner and whatnot. So I have them 8-8. A couple breaks here and there. Galloway gets a few long touchdowns, and Ismail and him run down the sidelines, and Santiago in the middle, and Smith gets the run. Then they can actually maybe put up some points on the board and win a few games more than that. But Arizona, I have at 6-10. They're a maybe. I've been higher than them the last couple of years because I thought, with Plummer coming in, and but they've had some injuries, and the injury bug hit them again with Moore. But they get the kid Boston, and they got Sanders, who catches a ton of balls, and they get the kid Thomas Jones in the draft. Supposedly the best running back in the draft this year. We'll see if that turns out to be the case. They're high on him. He's starting. We'll see what happens. Defensively, it's funny. From one game they'll be a sieve, the next game they'll be a stud. So you don't know how to plan that out, but. Philly 5-11, as Chris alluded, that they're on the team on the up. Next year is when we're going to start talking about them as a serious contender. Yeah. But why don't we move on?
Yeah.
To the more interesting division. Yeah. The NFC Central, the Norris, as we always like to call it.
The black and blue.
Any of these teams could win 10 games. Any of them, potentially, because they have to play each other, could win 6 games because they could just be beating up each other, or 8-8. They could all end up 8-8. With that in mind, again, I go with that theory. 2 teams are going to step up and win the division that you don't kind of expect. Well, then this is kind of the division I think that I'm going to have to pull the trigger on that, and I'm going to say the Bears are going to win the division, 10-6. They'll be tied with Tampa at 10-6, but I'll give them the division edge for whatever reason, just because, and maybe they end up with a better record. So the Bears 10-6, McNown, Robinson, Ingram. Now they get Kennison as a speed third receiver. I'm not sure Enos, he better show up this year or he's not going to have a job. No. They get the kid Allen waiting to go. Defensively, they had some key additions with Daniels and the safety. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but they had some key additions defensively, and that was their weak suit last year with Gary Crowton, the offensive coordinator, and with Dick Juron from Swampscott as the coach. They really made some strides there. I like them. Tampa Bay, I got the All-Star shirt. I had them going to the Super Bowl. I had the All-Florida Super Bowl. It almost happened, one game away on both sides. But, obviously if they get there this year, they get to play at home. That never happened before, although the closer it did in '85 with San Fran playing at Palo Alto. But Tampa Bay's, defensively, no questions asked. You don't even need to go there. Offensively is the key. King, can he hold on to the ball? Can he throw the ball? They're going to have a running game. So really the question is the quarterback. If the quarterback plays at a level that he needs to and then beyond, then they're going to be right there, guaranteed. Minnesota, Culpepper, he's a lot of preseason hype this year. They drafted him last year to be groomed for this job. They look like he's the man. They got Moss, they got Carter, they got Smith in a contract year. Defensively, they're a little shaky, but they'll win a lot of 35-31 games if Culpepper can do the job. We'll have to see on that. Lions, another one of those teams, you don't know which way. They picked up James Stewart to get a running game because they didn't have one last year. They got great receivers, although they lost Herman Moore for 6 weeks. Defensively, Porsche, if he comes into play, we'll see what happens there. Defensively, they were in a lot. They kept themselves in a lot of games last year because they didn't have a running back to kind of keep ball control. But they have Batch, and they keep those short passes to Crowell. Herman Moore when he wasn't healthy, and Jordy Morton's a great slot receiver. So we'll have to wait on them. Green Bay. One of these teams has to lose a lot of games. I'm guessing that Green Bay, because of you don't know what's happened with Favre and his elbow right now, he's in limbo. Levens is banged up. They have a lot of older people. Freeman's going on the way down. I mean, one of these teams are going to have injuries. The injury bug's going to hit. They're the most likely candidate. So there you go. What do you got?
I guess so. Same sentiments, really. It is the black and blue division. They will be beating each other up. Personally, I have a little bit more faith in Sean King, and I think that he's going to have a better year. I think maybe even a larger issue is getting rid of Mike Shula and having Les Steckel as their offensive coordinator. Have the quarterback, get a comfortable feel with what's going on with the offense. So I have Tampa Bay winning the division. I believe my graphic shows I have them going 11-5. The rest of the division from Green Bay down to Detroit, 9 wins to 7 wins. You could throw all those teams in a hat and mix them up, and you could say those are my picks. I do like Chicago. Chicago is one of my maybes, and that would be this year maybe. Green Bay, like Michael said, they're coming down, so they're kind of meeting each other there at 9-7. I'm not sure if Green Bay is done. It's one of those things where you always give the champ the tie, the benefit of the doubt, and they have to get knocked out before I'm going to knock them out myself. So if Favre gets healthy, if Levens gets healthy, if Freeman stays healthy, they can shore up the tight end situation, and they have a few young players on D that'll they'll keep them in the games. Holiday, hopefully he'll keep growing. We'll get that going. They'll be okay. So they're going. Chicago, they're on the way up. I like all the players Michael mentioned. McNown should have a better year. They got the quality. The wideouts are terrific. I really like them a lot. Minnesota, I'm not sure about Culpepper. That's the one question I have. I had to see him play. Preseason doesn't tell me anything. Obviously, their wideouts are great. Mm-hmm. You've got decent running back. The defense has always been a problem with them. I'm not really sure which way they're going to go. So I have them fourth. Detroit, Batch has been hurt. They like Michael said, they signed James Stewart to run. Doesn't mean a whole lot to me. I have to see it first. 7-9 is probably where they're going to be. I feel pretty confident that they're going to be in the basement, and the other 3 might be jumbled, but Tampa should win the division.
Very good. Sounds pretty comparable in terms of that. What do you got, NFC West? We'll get that quickly so we can get to our playoffs.
Okay, NFC West. Well, let's see. The Rams won the Super Bowl. How did that happen? Well, the Rams won the Super Bowl. Well, you know what? I think they're going to win the division again, and this time I'm going to pick it right, hopefully. So I have St. Louis winning the division. Not a whole lot of changes, to this Rams team. Obviously, the heart isn't there anymore, with the changing of the guard, with the coaching staff and whatnot. But Dick Vermeil didn't really, he didn't suit up. He kind of, he just kind of managed everything. I'm not really sure how much he was really coaching. I mean, sure he cried a lot, but does that do it for you? I don't know.
Right.
Kurt Warner, is it a fluke? It could have been. I don't think so, but it could have been. It's a situation where it's like, well, what exactly is going on there? So I have St. Louis winning the division, and then Carolina. Carolina came on strong last year, and Berline is a good quarterback. I know it's you can't really say that a lot about a journeyman quarterback, but granted, Jeffers being out, hurts. I still like Mushin Mohammed. Obviously Fred Lane isn't there, but Biaka Batuka, should at least more than make up what Fred Lane did, last year. Mm-hmm. So Carolina's a decent team. They could be fighting for a spot. Atlanta, I believe, actually should be 7-9. I have them, doing better than they did last year. a situation where, Anderson's coming back. I assume he's going to be healthy. He didn't do really that great in the preseason, but he should be okay. Chandler, he's another one of those, one hit and he's out. So that a lot of it weighs on what's going to happen with him. But they're still, a decent team in a not so good division. We wind up with the Niners and the Saints. I can't believe I have the Niners at 5-11. That's like sacrilegious. But that's what kind of team they are. And Jerry Rice, I wish he could go out on a good note, but it's not going to happen there. The Saints have some quality people, but they're in the Philadelphia mode of being a year away. So we're going to give the division to the Rams. Carolina's following not too far behind, and Atlanta, we'll see what happens with them coming back. Michael,
I mean, in theory, you got to go with St. Louis. They haven't really lost anything. In theory, they should be still on top. So I have them 11-5 and winning the division. Maybe by a default situation, maybe they're not as gun ho as they were last year. A little bit of complacency on their part, perhaps. Carolina, Bianca Batuca's got to be able to run the ball, keep the pressure off of Berline. They picked up a couple of the old timers on defense. I'm not sure if that'll help them or hurt them, one way or the other. We'll see. New Orleans. Blake throws a great long ball. They signed Horn to big money. Ricky Williams, they're gonna totally give him the ball as many times as they want, both aerial and on the ground. So, offensively, like Chris said, they're maybe a year away. I have them, a little bit on the high side this year. We'll see. Atlanta, it was a fluke 2 years ago. That's all I'm gonna say. San Francisco, as like Chris said, is sacrilegious, 4-12, but. They played well the last 4 games of the year. They threw for a lot of yardage, so don't be surprised if they make a little bit of a run. Quickly, let's move to our playoffs. I believe I will go first in the AFC. Let's see what we got. I think I have Denver pulling a little playoff spot action. I'm going to go out to Tennessee, and I have Tennessee beating them 21-14. Indy, by virtue of the worst record of the division winners, it'll be 27-13 over Seattle, who I have it going in, but that's got a little asterisk. That better be with Sean Alexander at the helm by week 4, and that way they'll be there. Otherwise, maybe a Jacksonville can sneak in or a Buffalo will sneak in. Then the following week, the Raiders will have a bye, and they'll host Tennessee. I just think, Gannon's a smart quarterback. Gruden's a great offensive mind. Defensively, they got the players. They're at home. Everyone's going to be painted in black and silver. I like them to beat Tennessee. And then in a battle of the teams that once were both the Colts at one point in time, or Baltimore, Indy. Indy, I think they're experienced. I like Baltimore. I have them, there. And originally, I kind of was leaning towards Baltimore winning, but you know what? I took Indy and their experience. What do you got?
Wow, that's pretty good. I actually will have the Patriots making the playoffs.
What? Homer. We're going to call you Homer.
They can do it, believe me. I get the Patriots making the playoffs. They're actually going to go out to Tennessee and face the Titans, and they'll lose. But that's all right. Hey, they made the playoffs. Good first step for Coach Belichick. It's something to build on. I think that's, if they got that far, most people would be shocked. And, and when they go to the playoffs, you don't want to see them lose, but I think that's what's going to happen. In the other wild card situation, I have Denver and the Raiders, playing for the 3rd time in the season. And Mile High gets you Jason Elam, field goal with no time left to take the win there. You're going over to the next round now. Indy's at home. They're going to play Tennessee, and it's the Titans again. They're going to come through. And Indy's, for some reason, I think they're not ready. They're really good and they're young, but they need a little bit more experience under their belt to get it going. And then the other game, I have Jacksonville playing Denver, and Jacksonville, they come through again. I think they're on a little mission themselves, and they'll win that game against Denver.
All right,
Michael, let's go to the NFC and see what you got.
No, you got it.
I'm going to go.
It's yours.
All right, well, let's go to the NFC then.
What do you got?
Let's see. For my matchups, I have the Redskins hosting a game, and they're going to be playing the Packers, and they're going to win that game. It's a situation where maybe that is the last call for Green Bay. And in the other game, I have Dallas, Carolina. I believe we saw that maybe a couple years ago, and Dallas maybe exacts a little revenge themselves. Their little last gasp. Moving on to the second round, we have St. Louis playing Washington, and another missed field goal for Washington at the end will mean that St. Louis moves on, and Dallas, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's got the quality D. They'll get 3 field goals, and we'll see St. Louis and Tampa Bay in the NFC Championship. Michael, you got anything like that?
Maybe a little bit similar, maybe not. I don't know. Let's see. What do we got? We got Minnesota, Tampa Bay in that first game. Tampa Bay will be at home. There'll be a wild card because I have the Bears winning the division, so they'll be the home wild card against the Vikings, who I think will, steal that last playoff spot. But like we've talked about before, there's a few teams that may sneak in there, and especially when you point about Culpepper. I have Tampa winning that on a Grammatica field goal.
There you go.
And the other first-round game, a good old classic barn burner. The heydays of the 80s, Giants and the Bears.
There you go.
I like the Bears and their offense to put a little hurt to the Giants and their ground control and defense, 31-20. Moving to the second round, that'll mean the Bears would have to travel to Washington. Best team that Daniel Snyder could buy will get the win, but barely. I like the Bears, like the same thing with the Baltimore, that they'll be right there. And the other game, and we talked about exactly revenge, Tampa. This time that drive gets a touchdown, and they missed a two-point conversion, 17-14. So I have a Tampa and Washington in a rematch situation.
I see.
Let's go on to the AFC Championship games, I believe is the next graphic that we have installed for us. I think in that situation I have, what do I have? I have Raiders and Indy. That's what I have. I had to look quick. Yeah. Raiders and Indy. The game will be at Oakland. Silver, the black, the fans, the offense. I go the Raiders.
The Raiders.
They're in the Super Bowl. What do you got?
I have the Titans-Jaguars in the AFC Championship game. It's going to be a nip-and-tuck game, and for the second week in a row, I will have the Titans beating the Jaguars and a return trip to the Super Bowl, and they'll be real happy to be there, at least I think for a little while anyway, till they play the NFC team. Michael.
All right.
Is it my turn
Yes,
again?
I think you
I
got
think
to
I'm
go.
going to go right to the NFC, and in that matchup, I have the Rams and the Bucks. Sounds familiar.
Oh.
And this time, like as Michael said, I believe Tampa Bay is going to come out ahead at home, a little different feel. The pass is complete this time, and it's a Tampa Bay, Tennessee Super Bowl for me. Michael, who do you got going in the
I got the
NFC?
Tampa Bay-Washington rematch, and like you said, a little bit of home feeling, and Washington, that missed field goal, that whole thing, I think they put a whooping on Tampa.
Woo!
33-10, best team money can buy.
There you go.
I'll go with the Skins. I'll follow in line with everybody else. Super Bowls, what do you got?
Super Bowl for me.
yours is
Let's
up.
see. It's tight game, back and forth, a little bit of a struggle, but in the end, I think it has to be Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's going to win the Super Bowl. And,
At home, no less.
And they're going to win at home. Let's see, is that a big thing or what? So if they get there, that's a pretty good chance they're going to win. I have Tampa Bay. Michael, who do you got?
Well, I got the Raiders and Washington in there, and it's actually revisited back to the time it was in Tampa, the 2 Super Bowls ago. It was the Raiders and the Redskins, and who won? The Raiders, 38-9, thanks to Marcus Allen. Only this time it'll be Wheatley, Kaufman, Brown. The Raiders will take it, 30-26,
Whoa.
and they will win the Super Bowl.
The Raiders. That's pretty impressive.
So I got the Raiders, you got the Bucks. Maybe it'll be the Raiders against the Bucks.
Ooh, that could be interesting.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, pewter
All
Pirates
right.
against the real Pirates.
Sure, that might work out pretty well. All right, I think we're pretty close to close. Anything, closing thoughts? Anything?
It's a big year, I think. I think we really have to see if the St. Louis's and the Tampa Bays and all these other new teams that we're not really familiar with just yet get us in their own consciousness of like saying, okay, these are the new guys. See you San Francisco, see you Green Bay, see you Dallas,
Right.
see you Denver. So it'll be interesting. Michael, any other? What's you looking
You know,
forward
like
to?
I said, I think it's all about those teams that are lurking. Your Baltimores, your Chicagos, your New Orleans, your Philadelphias, all those teams, the new blood. Now we get some of the new blood that's in the mix now with your Indies and stuff like that. And like you said, it makes it a little more exciting. But at the same time, dynasties aren't necessarily the worst thing.
No.
We'll see if it happens. A parity, that's what they wanted. That's what they got. So it'll be the Bucks
Well, the Raiders.
or the Raiders. We'll see you back here for a playoff preview show. We'll see how we did. Thanks to everybody behind the scenes. Thanks to Chris for coming out to us. Have a good time and a good
ya.
year. Enjoy.
Bye now.